At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Stéphane, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I appreciate you being on the show. You have such an interesting story, and you're doing some amazing things for people.
Thank you.
Love for you to kind of share with the audience just briefly who you are and what is it that you're doing now.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm Stéphane Akoki. I'm a founder of Elevate Côte d'Ivoire, a nonprofit that empowers Africans through education and opportunities. I am a native of Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa, and I've immigrated to the United States about 10 years ago, and I presently live in the Salt Lake City area in Utah.
Okay, wonderful, perfect. And so you've had a journey in your life that is, in my mind, extraordinary and something that really needs to be shared with people because so many of us in our own journeys struggle so deeply and wonder whether we can ever overcome. And yet you have done that to the point you're now really having an influence on others. Could you share with the audience your story?
Yes, of course. So as I grew up in Côte d'Ivoire, Côte d'Ivoire is in West Africa, for those who don't know, a native French country, French-speaking country, independent from France since the 1960s. So that's the context of the country. As you may know from many African countries, poverty is a big challenge. We lack opportunities, we lack access to the basic necessities of life. And so that has been most of my life. By age 12, we unfortunately had a civil war. And I would say about half of my lifetime has been, experiencing those challenges. So that has caused a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulty, being able to access school, being able to have educational opportunity, and just a feeling of never feeling safe. And being there and seeing so much suffering and challenges, you wonder, will I ever be able to get out of this? And it's tough. It's a tough feeling, but we're taught to keep pushing. Again, from 12 up to like 2019-ish, I go to Ghana for a religious service for my church. And after 2 years, I returned home to Côte d'Ivoire, and we had another cycle of a very big cycle of the war that led to the damage, causing severe damage to my university. And so then the economy had crashed. It was way worse than it was, even growing up. And I was wondering, okay, well, what do I do from here? How do I get an education? How do I create opportunities for myself? And after 2 years of struggling, dabbling between different things, becoming what I call a necessity entrepreneur, selling anything that I can to survive and help my family. I was fortunate enough to help with the family to go to China because essentially they're like, there's nothing for you here. There's no opportunity, there's no job. You need to find a better place for a better education. So I ended up in China in 2013. And again, unfortunately, the agency that led me there was a scam. So I get to Tianjin, China in 2013, and no one shows up. And I speak no words of Chinese besides just ni hao. And then I have this long journey of a year in China where I essentially survive, learn Mandarin, and then finally get a scholarship out of China to come to the United States to study business and then eventually computers. And that led me to a successful career in some of the large firms in the United States. And then from in that process also started my nonprofit to be able to give back the opportunity that I didn't have when I grew up in Côte d'Ivoire.
Okay, so you presently work full time, and
Yep.
you also have your nonprofit.
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I'm a product manager in a technology firm here in Utah.
Okay, wonderful. And so as you talk about that, I'd love for you to get a little bit deeper. I'd love for you to kind of share some of the emotions you were experiencing as you were going through this. What was going on with your family, and just the challenges that you were facing on a regular basis, and what was your thought process along that, and then what ultimately gave you the strength to move forward. And even when you were in China, where it was a scam and you were dealing with that, what gave you the strength to be able to move forward and ultimately get over to the United States and get into college?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is, I would say, lots of emotions. And as you're saying that, I was going through my journey in my mind and thinking about, you know, fear, abandonment, or anger in a way, and disappointment. And that was, I'll say, the theme of what I've experienced, growing up. I will say, we have this expression in Ivory Coast where we say, "It life is hard, but we're already here." We're already here, as in, like, what are you going to do about it? And now that you're here, and that's something that my mom also taught us. You need to do something. You're in control of your situation, and you have the power to change your situation. So what are you going to do about it? So from a very early age, she used to say, in life, there's two ways to succeed. Usually, it's either you're born in a rich family, or you were born a family politician. At least in my country, those are the ones that have the opportunities. And she said, "Well, sorry for you. Sorry, like you're born in neither. So you have to figure out. You have to figure out how to get out, and education is the way to do this." So I'll say, I think those words and those motivations from my mother were very essential to that drive, and having the end goal in mind, as in, like, for us, is family, where community, culture, where the children thrive to succeed for themselves, but more importantly for the family. You
Well,
want to help your family.
and I want to interrupt you there for just a minute because you're talking about something that I think is so essential. And if I'm getting the impression that although you were living, from what I'm understanding, in fairly deep poverty, is that correct?
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
Here's your mother. It seems like rather than being a victim of all of this, she's saying to you and her other children, you know what? It's up to you. You can get out of this, rather than just being negative and victimized by the whole situation. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because the you could to your point, uh, you could complain about your situation all day long, and not that we don't. It's a human feeling. But my principle has always been, and I know I drive my coworkers crazy. I was like, let's complain for about 30 minutes, but now what are we gonna do about it for the next 30? But yes, that's essentially the mindset that my mom has always been uh, teaching us. Um, yes, there are things we can control, but for the things that you can control, what are you going to do about it? Yes.
Oh, and I love that. So I just wanted to stop there because I thought that was such an important part. So, okay, so here
Mm-hmm.
you are as a young child, and whatever age that is, and you have developed this mentality because of your mother that,
Mm-hmm.
as you say, if I understood it correctly, what you cannot change, accept, but you can change what you can change. And
Mm-hmm.
so you move forward. So continue on. Talk a little bit more about what your life journey was on that and your
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah. So you have family, you have matter words. You also have faith. Strong believer, in God, and the power that He has, for those who act upon the faith that we have to transform our life. So always, thinking, I'm not alone in this journey. There's a family that's supporting me. They're friends, but there's a higher power, and there's the divine that's supporting us. So that, between like the motivation, the inner motivation, that of wanting better life, the the motivation from my mother, and also like your faith and your belief that in this journey God is going to do miracles, and you see them every day, and that's a I do say that I'm when I was a child, if you had asked me was I happy or excited that I was born where I was born, I would say absolutely not, because you watch TV and all the you see the world outside and you think, oh man, why don't I have these things? But as an adult looking back, I am grateful for the things I've experienced because it has shown me um, the it's giving me gratitude for the little things, and it's also I said that's a principle I'll add to the list, and it's also showed me that the power of like miracles when you act on small things, and an example of that is in the first world, for the most part, at least from my experience here, um, figuring out what to eat the next day is not the biggest thing. And if you look at the Maslow pyramid of needs, because of development and opportunities, a lot of people have moved past that stage. But in a developing world, more a bigger majority of people are still worrying about the day-to-day. And in a lot of time, for us, I remember those days where we had no idea um, what's going to happen tomorrow. But you believe that something will come out the next day, and then you have a lot of opportunities to experiment. As in, like, well, tomorrow is no food, but I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna figure out. You have no idea where you're going. You have maybe one or two things you could sell, uh, and you don't know who's gonna buy it, but you still go out every day. So it gives you that practice of faith, and you see the result every day. It's like, man, yesterday we thought we were never going to make it the next day, but we did. Okay, what if we try it again? So you get so much practice that by the time you get to adulthood, you're fearless. And I think that's the preparation that helped me in China. And despite being lost and all the things that were happening, I was like, okay, I have seen firsthand that through belief and action, there is always an outcome. It might take longer than I expect, but it always works. And that I'll say draw that resilience. And when I want to give up, I'll remember those things and be like, you got to keep pushing. Something is going to work out because you've experienced it over and over again in your childhood.
Well, and you mentioned your faith in God, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what comes to my mind, a couple of things do, but one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that comes to my mind is so often people blame God for their circumstances. Why would he
Mm-hmm.
let this happen to me? Why was I born here and why does he let me do this? It sounds like you kind of reversed that a little bit. And yet I think in other situations, people just totally wait for God
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and don't do anything else. They just keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and then he hasn't done anything necessarily. So how have you fit that in to your life, and as you work with others, helping them to understand that fine line between totally relying and not doing anything about it, being angry because, if he's God, why is he letting this happen? How have you put that together so that you're able to move forward with such, as you say, gratitude, which I think is great?
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it is a fine balance, and I'll say I have refined it over the years for sure. Because in French in Ivory Coast we have this saying, Dieu propose, no, l'homme propose, Dieu dispose, as in the man proposes or send a proposal to the heavens, and the heavens bless it in a way. And that implies that you have to have a proposal. You have to have a plan. You have to desire something. What do you want for the heavens to be able to bless? And so I've always operated that way, as in like I'll pray for guidance, and if I don't have a clear guidance, I make a plan, which I believe is the best plan, and I ask for God blessing on the plan. And even if sometimes Christians will often say, "Oh, I still am not getting any answer," my next stage is I'm doing it. and I'll tell God, hey, if I'm doing wrong, please correct me along the journey. But I'm taking the journey, and then I've seen it work so well, where it's that first step. We say in the Bible, the scriptures, faith without work is vain. You take that first step, and then you see the next step open. It's so incredible to have experienced it so many times. Like, for example, the matter of food, like I've mentioned. Well, step one is you need to get out of the house. I don't know where I'm going, but I need to get out of the house. I know God wants me to be happy. He wants me to eat that day. As basic as it sounds, he said he'll provide for me, like he provides for the beast and the flowers of the nature. But I own the plan, and I own the steps that I take towards it. But then once I'm out, then it's like, okay, where do I go next? Then you start feeling sort of we get the revelations or the insights from him. Okay, you've done your part. Now I'm gonna guide you. And then are you acting upon it? And that's another big principle here. And as you act upon it, what I've noticed is the more you trust, the more you act upon it, the more you receive. Um, yeah.
Well, and so what comes to my mind also is, you talk about the poverty there in Africa that you experienced, and I see the same thing here in Thailand, and of course they're very much Buddhist for the most part. And what amazes me here is, I see people, for instance, if I'm driving, there's always children or
Mhm,
teenagers at the lights
mhm.
selling flowers, selling cookies, and so forth. In the United States, if we saw that happen, immediately, what's our thought?
It's strange, I guess.
Yeah, and yet here it's just here's people that are living in what we would call poverty, and yet
Uh-huh.
they're out there, as you say, just trying to get food, trying to make a little bit of money. And
That's
I
right.
think here the average income is probably, if they're lucky to live on $400, $300, $400 a month, they're
Mhm,
very fortunate.
mhm,
It amazes me how we look at the United States
mhm,
and see the poverty, but even moving up that scale to where you have people that are definitely not impoverished, but they
mhm,
think they are, and they complain that they
mhm.
are. What,
Mhm,
how do we change that mentality? How do we change that culture to help people understand that, whatever our circumstances,
mhm,
that, and in your case, you grew up in poverty and yet you have been
mhm,
able to break through on that. How do we
mhm,
help people to develop that sense of gratitude that where they are in their life, number one, there needs to be gratitude for that and
mhm,
appreciation, and then also recognizing that potentially they can do something about it.
mhm. Oh, that's a good question, and that's something I think a lot about my experience, and I am still trying to figure out, like, the to your point, like the best way to translate those principles um, for someone that hasn't lived it. So that's where
Yeah.
it's really hard. Because it's like I just a few example here is like I last year I went with my board members for my organization. They're from Hawaii. They've been great help to Elevate and all the nonprofit work we do. And we've talked about a lot of things. We had a lot of chat about poverty and culture and challenges, and they have their own experiences in Hawaii and stuff. But there's also so much that was such an eye opener when they went by themselves. And I've questioned that. I was like, is the answer that people need to go and see? but how can they still have live those values without seeing? Like I keep debating that myself. So all to say, like I don't have a great answer, but I could share some insight. But to your point, when I came here, it was interesting. That was the first thing that I've observed. I remember I was giving a campus tour, and we saw a parking lot, and I made the comment that, my goodness, there's a lot of professors here. And they were like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, there's a lot of cars. I would assume only professors can afford cars." They were like, "Oh no, this is student parking. That's not even professor parking." I was like, "Wait, there's that many students with cars? Like how?" And I was just baffled by like the opportunities, the access, and obviously I learned later that this credit system and all that. But it was interesting to me that things that sounded to me like unachievable, as in like, and my dad worked 30, 40 years. He had a decent job. But then like getting a car was like, well, my goodness, that's like the retirement. When you retire, you're close to, you've saved for 10, 20, 30 years. Having folks that were younger than me driving cars, I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many opportunities here. But it made it so, because of that contrast, it was so much easier for me to get, the most beat up car and being like the happiest kid. Like I had my first car was a 1989 Toyota, bought it for $300. And I just love that car. My friend thought I was crazy, because they grew up in a system where it is expected that you have a car. And I grew up in a system where it is a luxury, even if, it barely works. So I think in conversation, by sharing those stories, it's helped some people see it from a different perspective, but still trying to nail, like, is it enough to share the stories? Do they have to travel there? But all to say, this country is so blessed. I remember the first day I landed here, I called my mom and I said, "Mom, we're never gonna be poor." And she was like, "What did you see?" I was like, "Just looking at Washington, D.C. from the plane, there was just a feeling that was so unique to this place. There's so much wealth, so much opportunities, but you could only see it from the lens. It's so much easier to see it when you've come with a different lens. Um, and then if you have grown up with this lens, and I can empathize with that perspective too, because as I noticed, the longer you stay, your lens starts changing. You start expecting those things instead of being grateful for it. And for me, what has helped me to stay grounded is to always my gratitude journal, and remembering those small moments for me. The first time where I had a full glass of milk. Milk is very expensive where I grew up. First time I had my full glass was here, and I was like, "This is the best thing in the world." And I remember my adopted family laughing. They thought it was super funny that I got excited about so many little things. And I look back and I'm thinking, man, I don't get excited as I did when I got here, when I was eating grapes and drinking milk, because now it's almost like it's normal. But once in a while, I try to, gotta remember, this is not a given. It is a privilege. And I think constantly remembering that has helped me a ton. And traveling back, it's helped me so much. Now I'm seeing it from a very unique perspective. I was there, I left, I've seen what the world can be, and I went back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is incredible. Makes me feel even more grateful. And I draw on the energy of the people down there. It is so amazing to see. And I'm gonna end with this one example here, how grateful people are. And one story where I went with a friend and from the east, from Vegas, and he had, and then just for context here, I've been gone for 10 years. I haven't seen home in 10 years. So I go back and I'm reverse culture shock. And that's whole stories to share about that. I had a dollar bill. This driver, taxi guy drove us around, and he's like, "Hey, we paid him the local currency, but we gave him a dollar bill." And he was like, "Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This dollar bill is the closest I'll ever be to the United States of America. You have no idea how much you've blessed my life." And I was like, "It's just a dollar." I mean, I have homeless people here that get mad at me for giving them a dollar. And then here's this guy that has gotten $1, and he is like, I'm never spending this. This is gonna be my good luck bill, and this is the best. And that kind of energy every time I go back tells me, man, I feel so grateful for everything that I have.
Well, and that's so fascinating. What comes to my mind, if you were to compare the
Mhm,
poverty that
mhm,
is there in Africa where you grew up,
mhm,
and look at the United States,
mhm.
who would you fit? What group of people would you fit in the U.S. into that poverty level in Africa?
Hmm. What group, as in, sorry, I'm trying to understand better.
Well, so here they are in poverty, looking for their
Mhm,
next meal. Can
mhm.
you compare that to the homeless, or is there a level above the homeless in the United States that are experiencing that?
It is, it's hard, because I feel like what I've learned from my travel is also poverty is also a very relative term. Um, as in, like, I've asked a lot of my friends I've gone to college with will say, "Oh yeah, we were very poor growing up," and then I'll go to the home and realize, my goodness, that your version of poverty. But why would they thought they were poor was because they're comparing themselves to the house on top of the hill. Because to them that is perhaps middle class, and maybe the house higher is rich. Um, so it is quite interesting to see that that principle. But if I were to say comparing, like when it comes to basic necessity and having access to those, I would say vast majority of people here have access to those things. And I would say in the United States, like, and the reason that is I like to say there's a lot of social nets here, um, that can in a way catch you when you fall down, um, the in society, as in, like, if I'm hungry, here, um, the church activities, whether it's my church or not my church, I could go there. Um, there are food banks. There are donations. They For the homeless, there are homeless shelters. And then that's not even including all the other nonprofit that work in the space of hunger. There's so many places to draw from. Plus, there's if you want there's social security, social benefits, that you can get. The problem in our economy and country, due to the nature of the poverty and the system, there's none of that. So if you have nothing, you are in big trouble. You cannot go to the hospital. Well, I guess you could, but the likelihood that you survive is very low. You can't. There's no food bank. I mean, they can't even run food banks, because imagine the millions of people that would be overwhelming the food banks. So what you do is really community. And the way it works is, I go to my neighbor, hey, you have some tomatoes? Take a tomato there. Hey, you have a piece of fish? Take a fish there. Hey, you have this and that, and then here's your stew. And then you hope you can get some rice in between. That's how people live in a day to day there. Um, but like the idea that I could go to a place, and I'll say, even like could describe it as the poverty, the opportunity poverty. And again, like, there's the job element too. There's an abundance of job. I mean, we're talking 4 to 6% unemployment rate. Uh, we're talking 40 to 50% in Ivory Coast. So 10x that. So even if, let's say, if you're physically able to work, you're not sick, either mentally or physically, there is an opportunity here to earn. It may not be a lot, over there, we have PhDs. I think someone was saying 2,000 or 3,000 PhDs that are unemployed. We have PhD that can't even get uh, jobs in, like, fast food. I mean, so they end up selling on the street. That's how bad it is. So let alone the high school kid or the bachelor degree kid or the associate. So I think that's the biggest challenge. That's what Elevate is trying to solve. Like the fact that one, there's no social net, and two, even if you wanted and you're able to work, where do you go? And the United States has done a fantastic job with both of those things. There's so much more we can do. I mean, socially here, I know it's not perfect, but there's a lot of incredible opportunities here for those who are willing to take advantage of them.
Well, and you said something, and I'm curious of whether that's real or not. You talk
Mhm,
about your experience there in
mhm,
Africa and
yeah,
the poverty, and yet the community. Uh,
mhm,
was there really a culture of community where if you went to a neighbor, if they had it, they would
mhm,
share with you?
mhm.
Was that actually part of the culture there that you grew up in?
Yes, yes, and I would say I don't know how we would have survived if we didn't have that. Yes, it is, and it was quite a culture shock moving here. To know that I just couldn't go knock and ask for any random thing that I needed of my neighbor. In fact, I mean, I didn't know most of my neighbors for years, because you have the garage door opener. That was a novelty to me, where you push that button and you drive in, you drive out, and you don't really see each other. Versus where I grew up, it is morning, good morning to all the neighbors on the way to work, and then good evening to all the neighbors on the way to work, and then you sit outside and you chat and you talk about your day. So that's kind of what I was used to. So it made it a lot more seamless to to talk, integrate, share. But like, yeah, I mean, and I like to share funny stories of we have about 60 plus tribes, and each tribe has different culture. They also have different type of food. So I will spot the I knew the tribes of my neighbors, and I knew the kind of food that they like to cook at home. So if I didn't like what my mom cooked, I'll go to the other tribe and eat whatever whatever food they made, because I knew that was my favorite, and I knew my mom's tribe didn't like that food that much. So I really enjoy. That's something I really miss about back home, and it's just beautiful that they most of us didn't have a ton, but it was always this: you gotta keep enough food and for the visitor, because you never know who might need it.
Well, and so two things come into my mind. One, community,
Mhm.
and how somewhere along the line we lost that in the United
Yeah.
States to a
Mhm.
large degree. But secondarily, you talk about your path of here you are in the United States, you've grown up in poverty, you've struggled and yet overcome,
Mhm.
and now all of a sudden, what was a blessing of
Mhm.
great import in your life
Mhm.
is now just to be expected.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
how do you help people to develop that sense of gratitude rather than the egoic or the ego longing or expecting this to be a part of their life? And
Mhm.
as you see that, how does that affect an individual's life if they can get to the point of being grateful for what they have rather than just expecting that that's how it should be?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fantastic, great question, and I would say, I think you ought to think about it from maybe bring a little bit of my computer thinking here. Like, think about a process that goes into the things you do every day. So the first step being you get up. How many people did not get up that morning? It's not uncommon that people die in their sleep. I have a few friends that did. So that's step one. And people say, well, you get up so often that you've assumed that it's the reality. Um, but think about that first step in your every day. So being grateful in the morning every day that I'm up and I am able to function. That's a big thing. Then from there, you usually move on to get breakfast and food. That food was served to you because of the collective work of a lot of people, from farmers, distributors, and all. Um, so being thankful that also was given to you. And if you're religious, then you thank God. But in reality, any of the things that you provided to you, starting with food, is because of someone else's labor. You're gonna get on the internet to work. You're gonna get on social media, check out memes, whatever you do. Again, all of the infrastructure that was meant for that, and and perhaps I think a lot about those details, but I wonder if people do. Like, it is literally somebody else keeping up the light. And I think COVID kind of helped us reminded us of that with essential workers. Oh my gosh, there are people, millions of people that we tend to ignore because they seem to be in the background that are working to make something possible. When those people weren't able to work, we all saw what happened in our supermarkets. We saw what happened to our supply chain system. So I think thinking about the step that we take every single day and be thankful for each of that is a big step towards like living a life of gratitude. And in terms of how does that impact your life? Oh, I think it's a huge impact. I mean, I honestly feel like, and I may be misremembering my religion classes, but in Buddhism, they taught us that the Buddha found out that the greatest reason, the biggest reason for unhappiness is is expectation, high expectation and outcome to things that you do. And that was an important lesson for me when I learned that. I was like, yeah, like people are very unhappy because they feel like to be happy, they need to have this thing, they need to have that thing, and that causes a lot of suffering. And I've seen that distinction in the U.S. versus in Africa. Like, it is it's wild to me that to interact with my own fellow Africans, Ivorians, for Ivory Coast specifically, to see that they are happier than a lot of people I know here. And we hear that in principle, but it is true. Having lived in both places, I know so many more people that are happier. And I've asked myself the same question: what is different? I mean, these people, again, like, this is, you're living the harsh reality of corruption, lack of opportunity, and all, and they're not pretending to be happy. In fact, I like to say, if you ask someone on the street back home, "How are you doing?" They'll probably tell you, I got this stinking malaria, annoying, but I'm alive, so I'm grateful. How you doing? And you hear that for the first time, you're thinking, wait, what? Are you gonna die? Like, this is serious. But they acknowledge the pain, because being grateful doesn't mean everything is fine. They acknowledge that no, things are not good right now, but they will be better. And it's that trust me, I've tried. So I've been trying to, like, how do I teach that to my friends here? Because it's like, it's so beautiful. But like, not having those expectations, and just being grateful for the fundamentals of life and keeping life really simple. Talking to people there, it's like, and I want to be able to spend time with my neighbors. I want to have food every day, a place to sleep, and time with family and friends. And it's not necessarily a lack of ambition. It's more of a, what matters the most. And I said that's another principle here. Like, they prioritize what matters the most. I went to business school. Like, business school, it's all, when are you going to make the six figures? When are you going to get to this title in your company and all this? And you end up in this rat race, which many of us are familiar with, where you start identifying those success, your life as needs to be successful. If you hit those things, when you're going to buy the house, the American dream, when you're going to do this, when you're going to do that. And for a lot of people down where I'm from, which again, they teach me so much every time I go back, it is keeping it very simple and, being grateful for the simple thing and realizing that I already have so much already, and I'm happy for what I have. I'm striving for more, but I'm not basing my happiness as if whether or not I hit that target. And I see a lot of people doing that, and it causes a lot of unhappiness.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. A scripture that comes to my mind, blessed are the poor, for they shall inherit the kingdom. And
Mhm.
what is it? I mean, as you look at the
Mhm.
culture of
Mhm.
poverty where you grew up,
Mhm.
and I see the same thing here in Thailand, they're
Mhm.
happy,
Mhm.
they're grateful for anything that comes their way. It's amazing that somehow we have lost that culture in the United States. And
Mhm.
wouldn't it be wonderful if we could get back to it
Yeah. Mhm.
rather than the victim mode that everyone seems to be in? So, just as we have a short amount of time left, I want you to share with the audience what you're doing for those people in Africa, what your nonprofit is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity again. So when I came here in the United States in 2014 after a year in China, my thought I first I was like, oh my goodness, like I mentioned, this is so incredible. I went from a college with no computers, where I was learning how to program on paper, to s- multiple computer labs. I went from a college with no where professors won't show up because they weren't getting paid, to being, in labs and office hours with professors and knowing them by first name and all of that too. And that made me think right there when I got here. I'm like, man, I wish my brothers and sisters back in Africa could have those opportunities. Unfortunately, there's most of us will never make it here. It's so hard to come here. So my thoughts were, how do I bring those opportunities back, the best I can, so they don't feel like they have to make the treacherous journey to come here. So that's all Elevate is about. So we're about bringing education, we're about bringing opportunities to African countries. And we started in Côte d'Ivoire, my home, and then we're expanded to 4 different countries: Ghana, Nigeria, and Botswana, to provide those opportunities. So we train people locally through remote training, and then we find them jobs here in the United States as virtual assistant. I know in Asia that's also is a popular business. Africa's lagged behind those opportunities, so we're trying to push for more African talent in a global workforce. So then they could earn, you mentioned, I think, $300 to $400, the good income in Thailand. What in my side, people live usually around the $100 to $200, 100 on average people earn. So we try to push that income to 500. And for some places, we try to even 10x some countries their income by having them earn in American dollars, and then working remotely from their place. So
That's
that's what we
wonderful.
do.
Okay, and how do people find what is your website where they can learn more about it and potentially become a part of that?
Yes, thank you. So oneelevate.org is our website. There you will learn about all the initiatives that we're doing, both from the education and the virtual assistant side. If you are looking for virtual assistant, we serve all sorts of businesses. We have a lot of experience with real estate businesses, fitness businesses, social media businesses, and we do bookkeep from between bookkeeping, social media, and all sorts of general assistant type of job, or website creation. And go to elevatevirtualassistant.com. That's where you could book one of our virtual assistants.
Okay, so oneelevate.org. That's ONE, elevate.
ONE, elevate.org.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
ONE, elevate.org. Yeah. And one
Stefan,
exciting,
what would be that final message you want to share with folks?
it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here. Reflecting on what we've talked about today, I'll say gratitude, full of gratitude for all the blessings that I've received personally in my life and for all the things that I was able to achieve. But wanting to also share the audience, there is happiness in gratitude. And there's also happiness at the end of the journey if you do not give up. It will be hard, it will be challenging, but I promise you that if you keep pushing, if you keep doing little step every single day, at the end, you can create the life that you dream of. And to my friend, I always tell, when they say, how are you doing, Stéphane? My answer is, I am living the dream. And I'm not even joking. I'm living the absolute dream. And I believe you can too.
Oh, wonderful. Stefan, thank you so much. This has really been enlightening for me. I mean, it's fascinating how, here you are having grown up in poverty, but having a mother that taught you rather than becoming a victim, taking charge of your life and doing something about it, and having that faith that you have in God, and then yet moving forward and doing what you have to do, and achieving where you are now, I think is just an incredible example. But the most important thing is that now you're going back and you're seeking to lift the lives of those from where you came. And to me, that's the blessing of the experiences that we have in our lives, wherever we happen to be. If we look at those experiences and the difficulty and the overcoming, and then realize that that has given us the ability now to reach out and to touch someone else's life in a positive way. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate it. And folks, thanks for listening. I hope you really got something out of this, because this has been very inspiring for me, and I hope it's been inspiring for you. So meanwhile, hope you'll join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.